Before television families became loud, fast and modern, there was one mountain, one farmhouse, and one simple good night that America never forgot. The Waltons first arrived on television screens in 1972, but its heart always belonged to an older world. One filled with the quiet struggles, faith and family bonds of Depression-era America. For millions of viewers, Walton's Mountain felt less like a television setting and more like a real home, a sanctuary of comfort during a time of national uncertainty. It was an atmospheric masterpiece of storytelling, wrapping audiences in a blanket of nostalgia, glamour and hidden drama that felt both deeply personal and universally shared. The brilliance of the show lay in its simplicity, yet behind that perfect facade and the glowing spotlights of Hollywood lay a tapestry of lives interwoven with silent pain, passion, ambition, and the inevitable passage of time. As the world outside moved forward, this quiet family drama grew into one of television's most comforting legacies, built by actors who carried their own secrets and depth beneath the pristine surface. It was a golden era of classic television, where the grand grandeur of the studio system began to blend with intimate human stories, creating a phenomenon that captivated the public imagination. We look back at this legendary cast not just as characters in a script, but as the forgotten idols and enduring legends who brought a bygone era to life with natural sincerity. The world they inhabited was one of soft emotional rhythms, where economic hardship met untamed dreams under the vast Virginia sky. But who were these performers when the cameras stopped rolling? And what hidden burdens did they carry, while teaching a nation how to survive with dignity? The answers lie deep within the history of the mountain. A place where every evening ended with a chorus of voices calling out into the dark, leaving an echo that still resonates decades later. This is the beginning of a journey through the golden years, and the behind-the-scenes intrigues of a show that defined a generation, leading us to the private lives of those who turned a simple home into a monument of American culture, where every smile masked a struggle and every song carried the weight of a changing world. To understand the magic of Walton's Mountain, one must look closely at the children who grew up before the eyes of the world, navigating the delicate balance between newfound Hollywood glamour and the grounded, dust-covered reality of the Great Depression. The journey into this beloved world began with a gentle and musically gifted son whose songs gave the narrative some of its warmest, most resonant moments. Portrayed with natural sincerity by John Walmsley, the character of Jason Walton stood completely apart because his strength was entirely quiet. Born on February 6, 1956, in the historic town of Blackburn, England, Walmsley was just a 16-year-old boy when the series first brought the family into American homes in 1972. While the on-screen family faced constant hardship, relentless physical work, and the dark cloud of financial uncertainty, Jason found a way to express hope through music, effectively giving the entire show a softer emotional rhythm that kept audiences spellbound. Walmsley never forced the sweetness of his character, allowing Jason's kindness and deep artistic ambition to grow slowly and organically over the years. His real-life musical talent made those scenes feel incredibly authentic, as if the melodies truly belonged to the ancient mountain and the loyal family gathered around him. Yet, as the cameras stopped rolling, the young actor faced the challenge of maintaining his own creative identity beneath the massive shadow of his television persona. After the final echoes of the show faded, Walmsley chose to continue building a life dedicated entirely to music, working diligently as a professional singer, guitarist, songwriter, and session musician. By 2026, he has reached the age of 70, and his portrayal of Jason Walton remains a gentle, lasting reminder that even in the hardest of times, music could make a simple wooden home feel absolutely full of light and grace, as the musical notes of the mountain provided comfort. Another young soul was quietly capturing the profound uncertainty of growing up in a world that was changing far too quickly. Aaron Walton, the thoughtful and introspective daughter, became a mirror for the quiet challenges many young viewers understood all too well. Portrayed by Mary Beth McDonough, who was born on May 4, 1961, in the sunny coastal enclave of Venice, California, the young actress was only 11 years old when the grand adventure began in 1972. Aaron worked as a character because she felt emotionally real to the core, standing as a beautiful contrast to the typical polished children of Hollywood. She was never the loudest member of the large family, but her internal struggles with personal identity, love, confidence, and independence resonated deeply with a generation of viewers. McDonough gave her a distinct softness that never felt weak, masterfully showing Aaron as a young girl, learning how to become her own independent person inside a massive family where everyone had a strict place and a heavy responsibility. Viewers watched her grow through the bittersweet pains of heartbreak, the soaring heights of youthful dreams, and the small, crushing disappointments of young adulthood, which made her story feel entirely honest, rather than idealized. However, behind that innocent exterior lay the intense pressure of growing up under the harsh glare of national television. After the series concluded its historic run, McDonough continued to act, but she also stepped into a more profound role, writing and speaking openly about health, self-image, and the immense psychological burdens placed upon child stars. By 2026, at 64 years old, she stands as a triumphant survivor of the studio system, and Aaron Walton remains one of the show's most tender portraits of youth, reminding us all that finding yourself can be just as difficult as finding your way back home. While the daughters wrestled with identity, the family dynamic was constantly energized by the spirited and ambitious middle son, whose restless energy brought both refreshing humor and sharp dramatic tension to the household. Ben Walton was the ultimate portrait of youthful determination, portrayed with a boyish confidence by Eric Scott. Born on October 17, 1958 in the bustling heart of Los Angeles, California, Scott was 14 when he first walked onto the set in 1972. Ben worked beautifully in the grand narrative because he felt like a completely real middle child, constantly trying to be noticed and validated in a large, hard-working family. He could be fiercely stubborn, wildly impulsive, and always eager to prove his worth to his father. But underneath that fiery, restless exterior was a young man searching for genuine purpose and respect. Scott played him with a brilliant maturity that slowly deepened as Ben grew into adulthood, experiencing the realities of marriage and adult responsibility. His journey perfectly reflected the dreams of many Depression-era young men who wanted far more than mere survival, yet had to learn the painful lessons of patience, discipline, and ultimate sacrifice. When the spotlight finally turned away, Scott made a conscious decision to step back from the constant, draining attention of Hollywood, choosing instead to build a much quieter, successful life in the business world while always remaining warmly and deeply connected to the loyal fans of the series. By 2026, at 67, his legacy as Ben Walton stands strong. A permanent reminder that growing up often means learning how to turn stubborn pride into enduring inner strength. The fire of the Walton youth was perhaps most brightly personified in the strong-willed eldest daughter Mary Ellen, whose grand dreams constantly pushed far beyond the limited borders of Walton's mountain. Portrayed by the talented Judy Norton, who was born on January 29, 1958, in Santa Monica, California, she was just 14 when the world first discovered her fierce spirit in 1972. Mary Ellen worked because she carried a striking, untamed fire inside a family structure that was entirely built on patience and restraint. She was bold, highly emotional, intensely stubborn, and fiercely determined to become something far greater than what society expected of her. Norton played that vibrant spirit with absolute conviction, showing a young woman navigating the complex path of balancing personal independence with deep familial love, soaring ambition with heavy duty, and external toughness with a hidden, fragile vulnerability. Her magnificent journey into the demanding field of nursing gave the series one of its most historically meaningful arcs, brilliantly reflecting the immense strength of the women who served their families and entire communities during the most difficult years of American history. After the final goodnights were said, Norton refused to let the industry define her, continuing to expand her creative horizons by acting, directing, writing, and performing on stage, while always maintaining a deeply affectionate bond with the show's massive global fan base. By 2026, at 68 years old, she remains an unforgettable icon of classic television, proving that true courage often begins as mere stubbornness before it beautifully transforms into a lifelong purpose. The heart of the mountain, however, did not just beat within the fiery ambitions of the eldest children, but also in the quiet, shadowed corners of the farmhouse where the youngest son spent his days looking toward the heavens. Jim Bob Walton, the quiet and mechanically gifted youngest son, carried a very soft, specific kind of loneliness inside a house that was always completely full of siblings, endless chores, and crushing family expectations. Portrayed by David W. Harper, who was born on October 4, 1961, in Abilene, Texas, the young actor was only 11 years old when he was swept into the whirlwind of television fame in 1972. Jim Bob was a character who felt deeply believable because he seemed most alive when he was isolated from the noise, buried in the intricate inner workings of engines, thinking about airplanes, and dreaming of the wider world waiting somewhere far beyond the physical borders of his home. Harper played him with a gentle, hesitant awkwardness that made him instantly relatable to anyone who understood what it meant to dream quietly in a world that demanded constant noise. His deep love of mechanics and aviation gave the series a youthful, soaring sense of immense possibility during an era completely shaped by devastating economic struggle and the terrifying approach of a global war. Yet, when the cameras were finally put away and the grand set was dismantled, the glare of Hollywood proved to be an uncomfortable fit for the reserved young man. Harper chose a path of absolute privacy, deliberately stepping completely away from the relentless spotlight to live a quiet life far from the constant attention of the entertainment industry. By 2026, at 64 years old, his performance remains a tender, beautifully preserved portrait of the ultimate dreamer in the family. The sensitive boy looking toward the infinite sky, while remaining deeply rooted in the sacred place that raised him, the true emotional anchor that transformed these individual struggles into a grand, cohesive American epic was the warm, deeply reflective voice that gave the series its very soul. This narrator was none other than Earl Hamner Jr., the brilliant creator whose own vivid childhood memories inspired every single line of the narrative. Born on July 10, 1923 in the rural town of Schuyler, Virginia, Hamner was 49 years old when his life's work premiered to the public in 1972. His distinct, gravelly narration worked perfectly because it never felt like simple plot explanation. Instead, it felt like memory itself, drifting through time to comfort the living. Each closing reflection, delivered as the lights in the old farmhouse went out, one by one carried the haunting sound of a man looking back across the decades with immense gratitude, profound tenderness, and a quiet, lingering sadness for a beautiful world that was already slipping into the past. Hamner's voice effortlessly connected the small, domestic episodes to the grand tapestry of real American history, transforming ordinary family struggles into something deeply intimate yet completely universal. Through his words, Walton's Mountain became far more than a fictional television setting. It became a remembered home built from the very bricks of childhood hardship, unwavering faith, and unconditional love. Beyond this masterpiece, Hamner continued to shape television history, writing acclaimed novels and creating other monumental dramas, yet his heart always remained tied to the Virginia hills. He passed away in 2016 at the remarkable age of 92, but by 2026, his timeless narration remains one of the most comforting, recognizable sounds in broadcasting history, proving that sometimes the voice telling the story becomes just as deeply beloved as the characters themselves. Behind the scenes of this pristine, comforting sanctuary, however, lay a world of deep personal maturity and hidden emotional gravity, beautifully embodied by the steady father whose quiet strength held the entire family structure together. John Walton Sr. represented a classic kind of fatherhood built on hard physical labor, emotional restraint, and a profound love that did not always require words. He was portrayed with magnificent, grounded dignity by Ralph Waite, who was born on June 22, 1928, in White Plains, New York, and was 44 when the series began. John carried the immense, silent burden of feeding a massive family through the darkest years of the Depression. Yet Waite ensured that this hardship never turned the character bitter or cruel. He gave the father a profound moral weight that made the Walton home feel completely safe from the storms of the outside world, even when money, unpredictable weather, or sudden grief threatened to tear it apart. His deep, resonant voice and thoughtful stillness perfectly captured the spirit of a generation of fathers who measured their love entirely through personal sacrifice. Off-screen, however, the facade of perfect peace was mirrored by a more complex reality. As Waite was a man of immense depth who had endured profound personal loss and wrestled with his own internal demons before finding his true calling in acting and public service. He brought every ounce of that real-world emotional vocabulary to the screen, creating a performance that felt entirely lived in. When he passed away in 2014 at the age of 85, Hollywood lost one of its truest craftsmen. By 2026, his legacy as John Walton Sr. stands as a monument to patient, deeply human strength. A reminder that the most powerful form of protection is often the quietest. This tightly knit world of survival and family solidarity was perfectly complemented by the gentle rhythms of the local community. Centered around the dependable storekeeper whose establishment served as the true heartbeat of Walton's Mountain. Ike Godsey was the very definition of small-town decency, portrayed with wonderful nuance by Joe Conley. Born on March 3, 1928, in Buffalo, New York, Conley was 44 years old when he first stood behind the counter of the general store in 1972. Ike worked as a character because his store was never just a business. It was the sacred gathering place where neighbors shared the latest news, heavy worries, joyful laughter, and small, life-saving acts of kindness during the most difficult years of their lives. Conley played him with a brilliant mix of gentle humor and plain-spoken honesty, making Ike feel like a trusted friend whom viewers had known all their lives. He was sometimes beautifully awkward and easily made nervous, but he remained fundamentally kind, providing a perfect counterpoint to the grander dramas unfolding on the mountain. Away from the set, Conley was a highly practical man who found immense success in real estate, maintaining a grounded, successful life far beyond the unpredictable whims of Hollywood. In his final years, he faced a cruel battle with dementia, passing away in 2013 at the age of 85. By 2026, his portrayal of Ike Godsey remains a beautiful, comforting reminder of an era when local communities were bound together by mutual care, showing that the man behind the counter was someone who truly knew everyone's name and cared far more than he ever chose to let on. The fragile harmony of Walton's Mountain required a fierce, protective, maternal grace to survive the relentless weight of the era, an emotional center that arrived in the form of Olivia Walton. Portrayed with breathtaking honesty by Michael Learned, who was born on April 9, 1939, in the nation's capital of Washington, District of Columbia, she was 33 years old when the world first fell in love with her in 1972. Worked because she embodied absolute tenderness without a single trace of weakness. She was deeply faithful, intensely disciplined, endlessly compassionate, and fiercely protective of her household. Yet, the brilliance of the writing and Learned's performance allowed her to feel the very real weight of human exhaustion, paralyzing fear, and profound heartbreak. She turned ordinary, quiet scenes of cooking over a hot stove, comforting a weeping child, delivering a sharp scolding, or bowing her head in silent prayer into moments that felt deeply lived in and completely true. Her extraordinary performance helped define the enduring image of the Depression-era mother who kept the hearth burning when everything outside the home felt dangerously uncertain. The role brought Learned massive critical acclaim, including multiple major Emmy Awards, cementing her place in the elite pantheon of classic family television. Off-screen, however, the glamorous facade of Hollywood success hid a woman who was privately navigating her own intense struggles and a path to personal recovery, adding an even greater layer of raw humanity to her enduring legacy. By 2026, at 87 years old, she stands as a magnificent portrait of grace under extreme pressure, a mother whose screen presence made Walton's Mountain feel like an everlasting home. This maternal strength was balanced by the sharp-tongued, fiercely traditional authority of the older generation, anchoring the family to the unyielding values of the past. Esther Walton, the legendary grandmother of the mountain, was brought to life by the incomparable Ellen Corby. Born on June 3, 1911, in Racine, Wisconsin, Corby was 61 years old when she first brought her trademark grit to the series in 1972. Grandma Walton worked beautifully because she carried the absolute authority of age without ever losing her hidden well of deep tenderness. She could scold, correct, and completely command a room with a single look. But beneath her strict firmness was a woman whose fierce love for her family shaped every syllable she spoke. Corby played Esther, with an unforgettable mix of sharp determination and underlying warmth, making her feel like the exact kind of grandmother many viewers remembered from their own childhoods. Her commanding presence gave the show an invaluable connection to older traditions, much harder times, and the unshakable moral backbone of rural life. In 1976, tragedy struck when Corby suffered a massive, debilitating stroke in real life, but her triumphant, courageous return to the series became one of the most moving moments in television history, as audiences witnessed true human resilience not just being performed, but being lived in real time. She passed away in 1999 at the age of 87, but by 2026, her portrayal of Esther Walton remains completely unforgettable, a powerful reminder that grandmothers often hold families together with equal parts discipline, sharp humor, and unconditional love. The discipline of the household was constantly lightened by the booming laughter and mischievous spirit of the family's beloved patriarch, who brought a sense of ancient history and endless wonder to the mountain. Zebulon Walton was the very soul of the land, portrayed with a magnificent, natural warmth by Will Geer. Born on March 9, 1902, in Frankfort, Indiana, Geer was 70 years old when he first stepped into the role of Grandpa Zeb in 1972. He worked as a character because he filled the home with a playful, wise, and deeply joyful spirit, constantly teasing the children, gently challenging his son John, and finding absolute magic in the natural world. Geer played him with such an authentic, booming warmth that Zeb felt less like a scripted character and far more like an old soul who had lived 1,000 rich lives before the television cameras ever arrived. Off-screen, Geer's own real life was an incredible tapestry of professional theatre, passionate activism, deep folk culture, and profound political resilience, including surviving a devastating period of Hollywood blacklisting during the 1950s. This turbulent personal history gave his performance an added dimension of emotional depth, signaling to the audience that Zeb's infectious humor came from someone who truly understood the cost of hardship and survival. Geer passed away in 1978 at the age of 76, and the series' heart-wrenching farewell to Grandpa became one of its most emotional milestones. By 2026, Zebulon Walton remains the mountain's joyful elder, a magnificent voice of nature, memory, and love that still echoes beautifully through the decades, while the farmhouse remained the emotional core. The wider community of the mountain was enriched by complex characters who brought a completely different texture to the narrative, showcasing the hidden wounds that often hide behind proper behavior. Corabeth Godse, the refined, dramatic, and often profoundly lonely wife of Ike, was portrayed with theatrical precision by Ronnie Claire Edwards. Born on February 9, 1933 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Edwards was 42 when she joined the cast, instantly adding a bittersweet humanity to the small town. Corabeth could be proud, overly fussy, highly judgmental, and socially ambitious to a fault, but beneath her rigid manners and sharp opinions was a fragile woman, deeply afraid of being entirely overlooked by the world. Edwards played her with an unexpected vulnerability, transforming Corabeth into something far grander than mere comic relief. Her private struggles with identity, marriage, loneliness, and self-worth gave the character a haunting quality that viewers came to appreciate deeply over time. Away from the series, Edwards was a brilliant writer and a highly creative spirit with a lifelong devotion to historical preservation. She passed away in 2016 at the age of 83, leaving behind a legacy as one of the show's most richly drawn supporting characters. Alongside her were the eccentric and gentle Baldwin sisters, Emily and Mamie, who carried a faded romance from another century into the modern era. Emily, played with delicate sadness by Mary Jackson, spent her life devoted to the bittersweet memory of a lost love, while her firmer, more practical sister Mamie, portrayed with precise authority by Helen Klebe, guarded the family name and the famous secret recipe with solemn pride. Jackson, a former teacher who entered acting later in life, lived to the grand age of 95, passing in 2005, while Klebe, whose long career stretched across radio and film, passed in 2003 at 96. Together, These remarkable actresses created a charming, sisterly balance that perfectly symbolized a graceful, old world that was slowly but surely disappearing into the fog of history. Thomas, Richard, Leonard, Michael. Wait, Ralph. Hamner, Earl Jr. To see what the stars of Walton's Mountain look like today and trace their journeys into the present year, check out the Waltons cast, Then and Now, 1972 to 2026. This video highlights the visual transformation of the beloved actors over the span of 54 years.